Merry meet and welcome witches. My name is Missa, and this is the Blossom Valley Sister Podcast. I need to be honest with you all 5 of you. I hate editing. When I first decided to create this mini-cast, I never intended to include a video aspect. I was just going to write a little script, read it into a microphone, and release it across all the platforms. And then I discovered that the most popular podcast platform is actually YouTube. So instead of recording in gremlin mode, I put on a little glamour magic and bought a ring light. I don't have any video editing software still, which means I sometimes have to record 3 or 4 times before I feel like it's right. Just that little bit of extra effort has felt like way too much lately, which explains why March's episode wasn't released until April 3rd. It's a bit embarrassing that a little hair and makeup and maybe 30 minutes of sitting in front of a camera feels like so much work. But I'm an introvert with a full-time leadership position in the mundane world and a fairly successful social life. I'm also only 6 months into living by myself for the very first time. I am exhausted all of the time. Now, these aren't excuses. I don't need to make excuses because I'm not trying to prove anything, and I haven't done anything wrong. Social media and hustle culture demand that we fill every minute of our days with something productive and somehow never feel burned out. If you're the type of witch that can wake up at 5 a.m., pull a tarot card, meditate, practice yoga, and do a 13-step skincare routine before going to work, that's incredible, and I am so proud of you. If you're the type of witch that only pulls a tarot card once a month, remembers to wash your face most nights, and falls asleep when you try meditating before bed, I'm also so incredibly proud of you. We may be witches, but we're still human. Now, this isn't to say that we shouldn't have goals. Of course, we want to grow as humans and as witches. The goal of this little creative project of mine is to help me grow spiritually. And maybe my growth will inspire others. So how do I handle not meeting my own goals? Grace. The thing about grace is not to hate ourselves and not to give up when we don't meet the expectations that we set for ourselves. Give yourself grace. I got this advice over and over again when I was first widowed. And at that time, I had no idea what that meant. Grace. What is grace? Grace is forgiving yourself. Grace is recognizing that you had nothing to be sorry for in the first place. It took me a long time to stop being so hard on myself. I first had to recognize the negative self-talk for what it was. Stop being so lazy. Why are you so stupid? Because what these things were really trying to tell me was, you're never going to get better. I had to defend myself against my own thoughts. I had to consciously remind myself, you experienced something traumatic. You are still healing. It's not going to be like this forever. A simple spell or ritual you can use to practice grace only requires a mirror. Maybe you already do something like this, like a daily affirmation. Gaze at your reflection and talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. You can address your concerns and anxieties first if it's helpful. Then respond with what you would say to your friend or with what they would say to you. If you can't think of anything, repeat after me. You are good enough. Full stop. You do not have anything to prove, anything to apologize for. You are doing the best you can given the circumstance, whatever those circumstances are. You are enough. Now, in my personal practice, I can't manifest grace without first confronting and embracing my shadow. That brings us to the topic of shadow work, an increasingly popular aspect of modern witchcraft, and something else it took me a really long time to understand. In the beginning, I associated shadow work with baneful magic, something we touched on a bit in the last episode. I didn't practice baneful magic, so I couldn't figure out how to integrate shadow work into my practice. It wasn't until I needed shadow work that it started to make sense to me. It was shortly before my husband died. Now, it's important to note before I tell this story that my husband was my brother's best friend. That's how we met. In September of 2021, I was at my brother's house, and we found out that his best friend from high school, a man who had been like a brother to me when I was growing up, had died in a single vehicle drunk driving accident. I was so angry. My husband was fighting for his life, and this man abandoned his wife and children. The week of his funeral, I had a panic attack at work, and I had to call my sick husband to come drive me home. I grabbed my copy of Light Magic for Dark Times by Lisa Marie Basile, and I cannot recommend this book enough, and found a practice for writing about someone who has passed away. Basile writes, "Last, write about ways they may have hurt you. Have you forgiven them, or is the hurt still fresh?" I got in the shower and thought about what I would write. I found myself screaming at him about the ways that he hurt me, hurt my family. Not just by dying, but by choices he'd made when he was younger, which caused us not to see or hear from him for nearly 20 years. He was 39 when he died. That was half a lifetime ago. I realized then that the person I knew, the person I was angry at, wasn't the man who had died. I didn't know the 39-year-old father of two, what he might have been struggling with. I knew the 21-year-old kid who made some dumb decisions. And I forgave him. He didn't hurt my family on purpose. He probably never even knew how his actions affected us. I didn't even know until that moment how much I had blamed him for something that turned out all right in the end. And I know I'm being a bit vague, but it's not my story to tell. The most basic breakdown is that he did something that was technically against the law. My brother was involved. They both got in trouble. But again, it worked out okay in the end for my family. More than okay, really. It was a catalyst that changed a lot of lives for the better. He wasn't responsible for hurting me, but I had held him responsible. I'd made him a boogeyman. It wasn't until I embraced my anger, my fear, my darkness, my shadow, that I was able to start healing. I didn't even know that I was hurting. So I turned back a few pages in Light Magic for Dark Times to the section on shadow work, honoring darkness and finding light in the shadows. And suddenly, it clicked. You have to recognize your darkness in order to find the light. Your shadow doesn't mean something baneful. It's just part of you that you try to keep hidden from yourself. shine some light on it. Face it. The only way out is through, and the only way to heal is to feel. Thank you for joining me on this journey as we explore the space betwixt and between the magical and mundane. Stay tuned and stop by on the 7th for another chat with me, Sister Missa. Blessed be.